Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Podcasa Bonita, the only show that has a slightly worse upload consistency and schedule consistency than the show we're actually talking about, South Park.
And I'm Rachel.
Oh, yeah, and I'm Shirley. Probably should have said that earlier. But, I mean, you probably know that by now.
Yeah, I would hope so at this point, right?
Yeah, I mean, we only show up, once a year at most, so if people forgot, I can't really hold it against them.
That's true. So you want to just jump right into season 25?
Yeah, it's instead of jumping into a lake, we're jumping into a puddle, because this season only has 6 episodes.
Do you remember the glory days when South Park had 14 episodes and they would do 7-episode runs? And now we have a season that's only 6 episodes long.
Exactly. Oh, but you can't forget the specials. The specials count.
Yes, I can.
No.
I can't forget them.
There was kind of a skip between the last, consistent episode. The last consistent episode that actually aired was back in, I think, October or December of 2019.
Wow. Which
was quite a bit ago. And everything else has been kind of interesting. So this is the first regular upload, or not really upload, but broadcast of the show since then. And even then, I don't know if you can count this regular, but for those who don't know, season 24 technically consists of the pandemic, the vaccination special, and the 2 post-COVID specials, the part 1 and part 2. That's technically made up for season 24, and we're on to season 25, and apparently even though this is only 6 episodes, other specials are supposed to make up for the 4 episodes that we are lacking in this season.
I know, I still think we should just review the technical episodes and then just do the other ones later as movie reviews.
Well, I mean, that's kind of what we're doing right now.
I just said that because I'm oh fuck, we just started recording and the season's not over. Oh well, I guess it is now.
I mean, it's over.
Because I think the movies shouldn't count. They should be a separate thing, but whatever.
No, I mean, it's already too late. We've already kind of done it.
Yeah.
I mean, you can watch all of our reviews consecutively and pretend it's season 24 review. Mm-hmm. But we didn't do it that way because we didn't know what was going on. And I have a feeling that the showrunners don't quite know either. We're just going along with it.
Yep.
So let's see. Let's jump into this and see if quality is over quantity in this scenario. That was really bad, but so is our intro. So
is our podcast.
So is our podcast. That's right. We're so confident. That's why our quality hasn't changed in the 6 years we've been doing this.
I know, to be fair though, we only upload once or twice a year, so when we do, I always forget. I'm how do we record this show again?
How do we do this? Yeah, it's probably why. We can't disappoint if we never give you high enough standards.
That's true. That is true. Alright, want to get started with Pajama Day?
Yeah, let me, when did it release?
February 2nd, 2022.
I know, that doesn't even seem like a real date. 2/2/2022. Oh, wait.
That's right.
PC principal bans the 4th grade class from wearing their pajamas to school on the most important day of the year. Meanwhile, Mr. Garrison has man trouble.
Oh my god. Speaking of, I love that Mr. Garrison is just back to teaching like nothing happened. And now he's just annoying his whole class, talking about his new boyfriend.
I mean, honestly, to me, that's the best way they could have gone.
It's better than him being president.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Looking back, I actually think that this is a pretty good start to a season. It's been stronger than the past, even before the pandemic specials and all that. I think this is one of the better starts to a season that we've had in a couple years.
Yeah, I really enjoyed this one. I'm trying to think. Okay, so one of my favorite quotes, because the PC Principal, maybe I'm in the minority, but I actually really enjoy his character. And
I do too.
I loved him in this episode, and especially in response to like all the kids who were like mad that they can't wear their pajamas. And he's like, "How many times have I told you kids not to bring up Nazi Germany? Every time you don't get what you want." And I was like, that is very like American. Like American people love doing that. Like,
see, my thing is, I feel like PC Principal is one of those characters that's changed the most. Since he's brought. Like, he was initially just used as a pawn, but now they really do truly give him compelling arcs.
Yeah, he's like
I honestly thought his arc of not wanting to go back on his word is kind of relatable, because there's, like, it's really, honestly, this is one of those scenarios where I was kind of like, oh, where's the current modern day political tie-in with his message? And I kind of realized, I was like, oh wait, South Park doesn't always have to do that, Matt and Dre. You know, it was kind of just a nice episode where, of course, it had its social commentary.
I was just gonna say, I'm like, it was political. What are you talking about?
It was, but like PC Principal specific.
Oh yeah.
And his journey of learning, like, you know, it's okay to, when in his pep talk with Wendy, where she's like, it's kind of valuable to admit when you're wrong instead of just holding on and grinding. I was like, that's just a good character arc that I really enjoyed and I can relate to, because I always hate being wrong.
Right, and I think it's definitely relevant today. And I also really love that they had Wendy deliver that speech. Because it felt in character for her as well. Like, they didn't just pull in one of the random boys. Like, I was like, no, that tracks that Wendy would be the person to say that.
Yeah, I always appreciate when Wendy's used, because I always feel like, I mean, since they really developed her character, I mean, like, early season 1, 2, and 3, and even up to 4 didn't really have, like, a super fleshed out idea of who Wendy it was. She was just the girl. But since then, and since they've established her character, I feel like they've always used her properly. I feel like Wendy's one of those characters where she's so refreshingly consistent. I never find her too preachy, but maybe that's because I like Wendy a lot. You know, a lot of people could think what she says is incredibly preachy, but I love her.
Yeah, but so were like Stan and Kyle and whatever, but I also love Wendy because she's like the only consistently well-written female character in this show, which I appreciate.
Absolutely. I want justice for Sharon Marsh more than anything.
I know. I'm like, girl, just leave your flop-ass husband.
Please. She's got, like, Marge Simpson syndrome or something.
I know, but isn't it I don't even watch The Simpsons, but isn't it, like, shown all the time that Marge and Homer actually have, like, a loving marriage, unlike the Marshes?
Oh, they do. They've separated so many times. They've actually the show is longer running, but they've separated more times than Sharon and Randy.
Ugh, what?
Yeah.
Ugh, okay.
Poor Sharon.
I know.
But this is a pretty good. I didn't mind, you know, I didn't mind the social commentary, like, on mask mandates. Like, it was kind of there. I didn't think it absolutely had to be there, but, you know, it was something to make it.
Yeah, it was like, it was interesting. I'm like, because I appreciate the message where it's like people on both sides of this debate are kind of like being insane and irrational, which is kind of true, but at the same time I'm like, this is also kind of a really great metaphor for how South Park has evolved, or sometimes like not evolved in the current times, where it's like, yeah, I guess like this fence sitting thing that South Park loves to do, where it's like both people are being crazy. It's like, yeah, but if people, like, one side of the debate of people, of like the mask thing is like actively harming people, and I'm like, I don't know if it's exactly the same to say that both people like.
I think they kind of, and maybe this is just me seeing what I want to see, but I mean, I do think they kind of. I mean, I know that they're not anti-maskers. Like,
right.
Not anti-maskers. They've proven it. I kind of appreciated a little bit of the hypocrisy with people who are holier than thou with, like, mask
totally.
because I still choose to wear mine in public settings. You know, I live in a state where I am really, like, the only one who does. I live in an area where I'm kind of the minority in there, but also my job requires me to wear, and I just don't care.
Yeah,
it's
same.
so minimal for me. I don't really care anymore. I'm so used to it, but like I do find like it hypocritical where it's like, yeah, well, if they're just gonna take it off inside anyway and not really uphold it, it is just kind of for looks.
Right,
so,
right.
I appreciate that point, you know, like the whole Denny's lineup where it's just like you can take off your pajamas when you actually sit down in the restaurant and everything. I was like, yeah, I mean, you know, they got something right about that.
Yeah,
it's like it's sometimes it is only for appearances. Like if they're not really, you know, if you're doing things that are just going to undermine it, how strong is your message?
Right. So, no, I totally agree. And that's why I'm like, I'm not outwardly mad at this episode. It was just a little like, I don't know if that really tracks the way that they want it to. But again, I appreciate the effort.
See, I did actually think that the pajama day as an allegory for it was really, really clever.
Yeah,
I thought
totally.
the actual metaphorical use of it was really fun. I thought the twist with it being opposite day was just very kid-oriented, and that's what I like. I always like a kid-oriented episode where it's problems that kids like face, and then adults are just taking it over.
Right. Yes, that's very South Park.
Like, you know, when the kids, you know, back in like I think season 7 with the Fellowship of the Rings episode, like kids are just fucking playing, you know, Lord of the Rings, and then the parents, you know, get messed up into it. I always love storylines like that, and that's all very vintage. You know, I realized before we recorded this, I watched a fellow YouTuber, Johnny Two Cellos, who is far more successful than we are, like not even a comparison, but he makes really great commentary on not just South Park, but like a lot of adult animated shows and everything. And he really, when I watched that, he said, like, this feels very vintage South Park, and I was like, that's a really great way to describe it. It really does kind of feel like it's a plot that could have happened, like, season 12, 13, 14.
Yeah, I agree. This season felt much more fun and, like, old school South Park, which I liked. And before we move on, I just want to say one last thing, which is that all the boys looked very cute in their pajamas.
Oh, absolutely. I really loved like the little details in this episode. Like the overarching was just kind of fine for me. You know, it was good. It was a decent episode, but I loved the little like where it was treated very much like the Met Gala.
Yes.
I just thought that was really, really fun. So this was a fun episode. I think it's a good one to like go back and watch. And the Mr. Garrison stuff is hilarious too.
Yeah, and it did like feel very true to life, because I remember being a kid and when it was like opposite day or pajama day or like anything that was like different than the average school day, like it was so exciting for all the kids.
Exactly. But no, I kind of looking back, I think I like this episode more now than I did on my first watch. Yeah,
I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a pretty strong opener, which is impressive considering South Park doesn't have a lot of those.
Not much anymore. But next episode, I'm actually even more excited to talk about.
Oh yeah, I like this one. The Big Fix aired on February 9th, 2022.
Dan's horrified to realize he's misinterpreted some of the greatest writing of all time. Randy attends a cannabis expo where he discovers a shocking fact. Can token help? I love nothing more than being gaslit
by my favorite show.
I love getting gaslit by my favorite show. Oh man, the Tolkien versus token debate. That's like South Park owning up to shit, but in a South Park way.
Yes, and still actually being like funny about it.
It was absolutely hilarious, but also still acknowledging, like, yeah, we probably shouldn't have done that. You know?
Right. It's just funny because it's crazy to me, like, especially maybe because it's just, like, it's South Park, but I'm like, I never had a problem with him being called Token Black just because that was so obviously the joke. Like,
yeah, exactly. And I think, it was, at one point, he was such a throwaway character, and he was such a gimmick, but you kind of look at a lot of the characters, and they were so one note for such a long time.
Right.
That it's like we were just talking about Wendy. Wendy was just the girl. Token Black was Token Black, and Kenny was just the kid who died. And it's so funny. Like, South Park truly has a lore to it. It really, like, evolved. We all like to poke fun and, like, it's the Cartman and the Weed Bong episode. But, like, this show really is complex, so I like their ability to kind of go back retroactively and say, never mind, we're gonna make him more fleshed out. And it's really funny, and I don't know if it's necessarily them, like, apologizing for anything, but I kind of love that it's kind of pointing out the biases in the audience, but also the writers.
Yes, totally. Speaking of, just, like, the episode itself is like, I mean, it's funny and I like it, but what maybe probably my favorite thing about it is that after it aired, the South Park team has, like, retroactively gone back and changed every mention of Token and, like, changing his name. I'm like, y'all really are trying to gaslight me into thinking I'm a racist.
Exactly. And what's kind of cool is I love the idea, like, of this episode. I like that it's Stan that's facing this, and everybody else is like, yeah, we all kind of knew that, because Stan, it's such a Randy thing to do. Like, Stan takes every single wrong turn in trying to make himself seem like not a racist, but then alienating Token, and like, it's such a Randy thing to do, and I love that Stan's, like, trying his hardest to not be his dad by being his dad.
Yes, and I really liked, it was kind of a small detail at the beginning where they have the blacks over for dinner, and you can tell them kind of, I mean, it wasn't just Stan who did this, it was, like, Sharon and Shelley, like, the whole Marsh family, like, also didn't realize that his name was spelled like that, so I thought that was kind of a nice detail where it's like, oh, okay, so, like, the whole family, they're kind of just, sheltered and oblivious, and it was like, I really liked that.
Well, I also kind of loved that Randy was the one who probed it to make it seem like, why would you call your son Token Black? Why would you give him trying to be the one, like, accusing the blacks of being, like,
I know.
and it's kind of like, to me, it's very weird, but it's like the sensation where, my sister and a lot of my friends and, like, personal family are on the autism spectrum, and I will see, like, so many TikToks of people, like, playing a character. They'll be playing, like, an annoying kid, and then they'll get backlash for being, and people will say, like, ugh, I can't believe you're making fun of autistic people like this. Like, I can't, it's like, nowhere did it ever say that this person was on the autism spectrum at all. I think you're just equating being an annoying piece of shit with having autism, and I think that kind of makes you a little bit the asshole there. Being annoying doesn't automatically mean you're on the spectrum. Like, I'm sorry, there are plenty of neurotypical people who are assholes, so I liked that Randy was the one who probed it, only to reveal his own biases, because that's kind of what, I mean, not trying to sound like a boomer here, like, that's what being too woke is like. Like, you're the racist when you're trying to be too woke. Not like that, but it's like when you're overly conscious about things, you can end up seeing people as merely a stereotype. Yep. And I was like, that's kind of a cool way to talk about it.
Yeah, and I mean, I totally agree, and I think that, again, Randy was such, like, the perfect character to do this storyline, because he's such a good poster child for, like, performative activism and, like, pretending to be very woke. And especially, like, look by the end of this episode, he, like, started a race war with the only black family in town. Like,
speaking of the end of the episode, I thought it was so funny and satisfying with the voice change, with Trey Parker no longer voicing Mr. Black.
Oh, yeah.
I thought that was like the perfect nail in the coffin for me. That was the perfect way to seal this episode up in, like, a little box and gift it to us.
Yeah, this episode was really well done. One of my favorite little parts was when, Stan is going back and reading, like, J.R.R. Tolkien to try to learn about Black history. Again, it's, like, such a misguided way. Like, you can tell he has good intentions, but that he doesn't know what he's doing. And then I love that he's, like, doing this to try to make people of color feel more included. And then he makes Tolkien leave the room every time. Like, it was so perfect. Like,
see, and that's another thing that I really loved about this, like, experience as the episode, because I feel like out of all the episodes in this lineup, this had, like, the most relevant and well thought out message, if you can call it that, where it's like, it's okay to admit when you were wrong, because your intentions aren't always bad. So you can have perfectly normal, happy intentions. You're going to have biases, and the best thing that you can do is just admit to them and not try and cover up the fact that you did or said or believed those things.
And it kind of carries over the theme from last episode too.
Very much. Like, it's okay to admit that you were wrong, because you're going to grow as a person. You're going to change what you thought, and even if you didn't have negative intentions, you can still have, problematic ideas.
Right, and it's like, and it's also acknowledging that even if you didn't intend to, you can still, hurt people's feelings, and it doesn't, it's not right, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you meant to do that, You can always just say sorry and be better.
Exactly, you just don't try and speak for oppressed groups, acknowledge them first.
This episode reminded me a lot of the last big Stan Token episode, which was With Apologies to Jesse Jackson, one of my favorites. And it reminded me of that scene at the end where Stan tells Token, he's like, my dad isn't racist, he's just stupid. I'm like, okay, that has aged very poorly. Like, turns out he's both.
He's a little bit of both. But I also, like, I don't think this is, like, regression from Stan. I think his intentions were good, but it just kind of shows, like, your intentions can be great, but you could still fuck up, so it's better to own up to what you did. No,
totally. I think it's a great episode for Stan because it has a good story arc, and it shows, again, like, him trying to be good, but being a little bit too much like Randy, so he goes about it the wrong way. But then I really liked, again, the end where you can tell, like, Stan isn't racist. When he finds out that Token is, like, gonna be moving next to him, he's, like, so excited because he gets to have a friend nearby. And then it really, this season has really shown to me that I'm like, okay, Matt and Trey know that Randy sucks now. Like, they're, like, well aware of it.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, and we'll get even more into that a little later. But this, to me, and then one other episode, I feel like are the standout episodes of the season. So, there really wasn't one here that I think was, like, absolutely bad or terrible. But we're about to get to my least favorite, I think, of the season coming up next. Okay. Was there anything else you wanted to say about the second episode? I think. Other than it was so fucking funny, too.
It was, like, yeah.
It delivered jokes, so another reason why it's top tier for me.
Yeah, totally. The only other thing that I had written down was that I liked the quote where Stan is talking on the phone with Cartman, like, did you know that it's like the Token's name was actually spelled like this? And then Cartman goes, J.R.R. Tolkien has an L in it? That's gay. Like, it's so funny to me, and, like, because that really is a good representation of, like, stupid, like, kids that age are like, the letter L is gay now. Like, it just makes no sense.
They're still kids. I love it when our kids get to be kids. You know, that's the best. Well, awesome episode. Loved it. Let's move on to something I don't love as much, which is episode 3.
The next episode is called City People. It aired February 16th, 2022.
When Cartman's mom gets a job as a real estate agent, Cartman becomes inspired to enter the game himself. It's not long before all hell breaks loose. So I think I was a little harsh on this episode when I first watched it. It is the weakest, in my opinion, of...
I think so, too.
Like, it's not as bad as some of their worst, but in comparison to what we just had, it's definitely weaker. I think the jokes in general.
I think, right, in my opinion, like, it's not downright, like, offensive or bad. I'm like, this episode just really wasn't that funny to me.
Yeah, it just wasn't as funny. Like, I thought the city people, like, acting like pigeons and just saying words like, it was fun for a minute, but I feel like they could have, I felt like they hit the joke way too fast, and then they just kept it going. Mm-hmm. I feel like if they had made the city people talk kind of normally and then go off the rails and then start acting like complete seagulls, I guess.
Right.
It would be a little funnier.
Because then it could have, like, continued with, again, the theme of the season where it's, like, maybe they present as, like, very polished and, like, better than the country hicks or whatever, and then you kind of see them, like, just devolve into, like, pigeons or people who, like, are really just the same as them. Because again, this whole pigeon joke, I'm like, okay, it was funny the first time, but is it funny, like, the 20th time?
Yeah, it was just kind of a basic joke where I kind of expected it, so not, like, offensive, didn't hurt my feelings or whatever, you know, it got a couple laughs out of me, but it was one of those ones where I was like, okay, we could have done something else. It's like a little more. It wore itself out.
Right, and it's also, it was like, okay, like, do you have anything else to say about the city people? No, they're just, like, shallow and vapid. Like, I get it. Like, is there anything else you wanted to say? Okay, no, just do the same joke 10 times in a row.
Exactly. But what I did like, some of the things I did like about this episode is I always kind of enjoy seeing Cartman and Leanne's relationships, like, in like the manipulative kind of way. It's weird where I'm like, I don't think their relationship is good, but it's interesting to watch.
Yeah. It's
always so interesting anytime they kind of have a spotlight episode with their relationship between one another. It's kind of cool. Like, I do also like the fact that it keeps Cartman really consistent, where it's like he will go to the nth degree just to get what he wants, to be lazy. He'll be, like, not lazy to be lazy. Yeah,
I like that they kind of show him, like, he, like, created his own business and fucked up South Park's economy just to make sure his, like, mom is there for him after school to make him food. And it's so funny because, like, it's like, bro, you could just look at all this effort that you're putting into it. You could just make the food.
Yeah, I won't lie. No offense to any real estate agents listening, but it is kind of a practice that's lost a lot of its meaning over time. Because honestly, like, so many agencies can be brought up so quickly where they really aren't doing much as an agent, you know? It kind of has lost a lot of its meaning where almost anybody can be a real estate agent and everything, and I'm like, yeah, you know, my partner and I have been looking at apartments for ages, and people keep coming up to us and be like, hey, you know, we'll be your agent, we'll be your real estate, we'll help you find something. I'm like, okay, what are you going to do that's different than what I'm already doing?
Right.
We're going to do the same thing, we're just going to charge you money for it.
Yeah.
Like, it's, you know, so, again, there are specific, like, positions, but I did kind of like them taking the piss out of a market that's oversaturated.
My favorite joke, I think, was that, the most important part about working in real estate is having the cool picture. And I was like, I have to say, as much as I shit on Cartman, his photo was pretty cool.
It was, you know, broken backs. Same with the picture thing, though. Like, the picture joke, I think, went on a little. It was just kind of a weak joke for me. It didn't pull a lot of laughs except for like the initial time. And then as it kept going, I was like, okay. Yep, they're still doing the picture thing. All right, is there a joke? Are we just gonna rely between the city people and the picture joke? Are those the only ones we're gonna get?
Well, I at least like the picture because it was kind of like two jokes in one, where it's like kind of exposing them for being, again, kind of incompetent and just relying on the picture and then the visual gag of like the ridiculous looking picture. So I enjoyed that.
Exactly. When it got into like the back-breaking territory, I was like, okay, a little predictable there, but that's fine. It really wasn't like offensive. It was just kind of, mediocre as far as like what I consider jokes for South Park. But I will say, the running joke that happens later on, where Carbon ends up living in a hot dog. He's like, like that shit's funny to me.
That makes this episode all worth it to me.
Maybe it's just because my humor in general, my sense of humor, is just turned into garbage. But South Park's partially to blame for that anyway. So
yeah. I did like the end of this episode where he just goes, "Weak, I live in a hot dog," and then it ends.
Exactly. So, not my favorite episode, but again, not like offensive. Whatever.
And it is kind of funny that we spent this whole episode like talking about how this one is kind of derivative and does the same joke over and over. But then I realize how hypocritical that makes me, because the city shitty pun still makes me laugh after 25 years.
Oh, yeah. I still laugh my ass off whenever they make a mention of Kenny dying in some sort. Mm-hmm. So, I just don't think these are as, like, strong of jokes.
Yeah, totally.
Like, I think they're just kind of basic entry-level jokes.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have, like, a lot of depth to them. They're stuff that I kind of already expect. But, again, not bad. Just there. Not my favorite. You ready to move on?
Yes. The next episode is called Back to the Cold War, and it aired March 2nd, 2022.
A lot is riding on Butter's ability to crush the competition in an all-important dressage championship. This is just, to me, like, immediately when I was like, Trey's talking about his daughter being in dressage.
Because I remember seeing that she does horse riding on Boogie's Instagram.
Like, it's like, it could have been, soccer. It could have been literally anything else. But it's cool that they got to make the Russian blue joke about the horse.
And plus, if it was soccer, we couldn't have all those graphic horse sex scenes.
That is also incredibly true. Quite graphic. I feel a little bit for every other horse. And melancholy, man. Whew.
Okay. I do have to say something, is that it's funny because I know that they have an entire, like, writer's room and more people than just Trey collaborate on these episodes. But anytime something like this happens, like, I just assume that it's just Trey airing all his dirty laundry, even though it's necessarily not. It might not even be the case. Like, the whole joke where Mackie's talking about, like, you kind of, as you're getting older and you feel insecure about it and your dick doesn't work anymore. And I'm like, oh, I guess Trey's having erectile dysfunction. Like, I don't even know if that's true, but I just immediately assumed it.
I love Butters so fucking much, but honestly, Mr. Mackey was the highlight of this episode for me, which I wasn't expecting. Butters actually got a lot of attention this season, but I'm not mad about that at all. I love me some Butters, but Mr. Mackey's line, it was very interesting that they chose Mr. Mackey to be this person, because it could have been Randy, it could have been Gerald, it could have been kind of almost any other character. It's really cool that they picked Mr. Mackey for this role.
Well, I think part of the reason they didn't do Randy is, I mean, obviously he has his own thing going on with the freaking Integrity Farms.
I'm thrilled they didn't do Randy.
Yeah.
I'm happy. But I was like, but they also used Mr. Mackey in the episode The Scoots with the Scooters. Not a strong episode, but again, Mr. Mackey standout episode, which is kind of cool. So.
Right. But I think part of the reason they didn't choose Randy is because by the end of this, I mean, this episode's about Mackey kind of, like, acting ridiculous, but by the end, when he talks to his mom, you kind of realize that he is a little more nuanced, and it's kind of a touching ending, and it makes Mackie look good. And that kind of like, that's why they didn't choose Randy, because at least Matt and Trey know that Randy's just like a one-note asshole at this point.
Exactly. You know, I think my favorite thing about this episode, not only because of the jokes there, like, your dick doesn't work like it used to, I've genuinely loved the arc, like, where she ended up saying, like, hey, the world wasn't better then. Shit sucked back then. It was just familiar. Yeah. Like, it was familiar. It's the devil you know versus the devil you don't, where it's like, you know, yeah, shit kind of has never been always great and sunshine and rainbows. There's always some awful garbage shit happening. And, like, you know, even when I was, you know, I'm 24 now, but there are times where, like, ugh, you know, back when in high school when Obama was president, like, man, this shit wasn't happening. It's like, well, it kind of almost wasn't really even better. Right. You know, the world there was never a point in history, well, specifically in, like, American history, where everything was just absolutely butterflies and rainbows. And I kind of like that they hinted on that. It's like, this wasn't better. You know, the time that you're talking about, it wasn't better. It was just felt familiar. Mm-hmm. You were used to it, and you got used to it. You understood the experience. Like, you got to a level of comfort. And I thought that was a really cool message. Like, this season, they really packed on, like, interesting perspectives. So it's a lot of... Yes.
Because I really liked that too, and I thought it was a really, like, mature take on a really complicated issue with, like, Russia in general, but also, like, the attitudes in America today, and I totally agree with you. And I also think it was very similar to, like, the Member Berry storyline, but it didn't have the, like, obnoxiousness of the Member Berries.
Yeah, and the plot that went absolutely nowhere.
Right. But kind of jumping off of your, like, thing about nostalgia, and I like that because it's, like, not even necessarily, like, things weren't always that great. It's just, like, the reason that people have nostalgia for their past or their childhood, and they say, like, things were better back then. It's like, well, not necessarily. You just weren't paying attention to it because you were a kid. Like,
like, I glorified, like, my time as a kid. Be like, man, it was so cool. I was like, I didn't have to vote for Bush, like, back in 2004. Mm-hmm. I was a child, so, you know, shit kind of didn't suck for me because you're a kid. Your biggest issue is, you know, like, who you're going to hang out with later today, what game you're going to play at recess. Well, I mean, okay, well, like, going way too deep. I mean, there are a lot of problems that kids can realistically face.
Right, but I know what you mean.
I'm not saying that, but, you know, there's a lot of times rose-colored glasses with certain things.
Yes.
And I also, another thing about this episode that I really appreciated, because again, I don't really think it was as strong joke-wise as it was, like, message-wise. I liked that the horse race was a really good allegory for misdirected anger at, like, Russian people, where it's like they're like, we're banning imports on Russian people and this and that, and it's like, okay, I get where the frustration is coming from, but it's like, you don't be mad at a Russian person. Mm-hmm. You know, they aren't Vladimir Putin. Like, we have people in the States who are literal fascists and supporters of Putin, where there are people, like, actually suffering in Russia under his regime. Right. So it's like, you're misdirecting your anger. Yes, it's perfectly fine to be angry at the authoritarian dictator. Absolutely. I'm not angry about the people who do not have control under his regime. So it's kind of like, oh, we've got to kill this, we got to put laxatives in this Russian horse to make him shit. Right. During dressage.
Yeah, and I love that, because that's, again, kind of like a funny South Park take on a complicated thing, but again, going back to nostalgia, I really liked, again, the misrepresented or misdirected anger towards like this 10-year-old Russian kid who had nothing to do with invading Ukraine. And it kind of reminds me of the way that Americans treated Muslim people after 9/11. And again, it kind of reminds me again of the nostalgia. It's like, this is literally the same exact thing happening. Like, it wasn't better back then. You just it's just literally the same thing. It's just stuck in the cycle, but you somehow convinced yourself that back then it was better and nicer when it really wasn't.
And I also kind of like the idea of like, oh, if he wins this against the Russian, then that's a win for us as a country. That's a win for us as a nation. It's like, no, you're putting like so much significance in something that's incredibly trivial, you know?
Yeah.
I'm gonna be honest, I don't really give a fuck about how a sports team against Russia does. You know, that's not, beating Russia at a sports game is not the same as, you know, stopping an invasion of a nation. So, you know, it's I kind of like that it really did like take the piss. It's like, yeah, you can be all mad at the wrong people. You're not making a difference. Yeah. It's just you being ignorant. And
I loved that, anything that talks about what a piece of shit the American people are, because I definitely enjoy that. And it's just like, again, like you say, like, oh, if we beat the Russians in this horse competition, then it's a big win for America. It's like, okay, this isn't about America at all. Like, it's just kind of showing about, again, how ignorant, but also how self-centered America is.
Oh yeah, and it's not exclusive to America, but you know,
I just have to deal with Americans every day, so
yeah. It's, and I kind of love that Butters is only really nervous because he doesn't want to disappoint his dad.
Yeah.
Like, it kind of shows like the rhetoric, like you're just kind of fear mongering a lot of these kids, and they're not really afraid because of the circumstance. They're afraid at the reactions of people above them, their parents, you know, their teachers.
Yeah.
So I don't know, like, pretty decent episode. Not like the funniest, but I thought the social commentary was really spot on.
Yeah, I agree. All right, do you want to go on to the next one, which I think is your favorite?
This or The Fix is my favorite. This is a wholesome episode, and I love it.
All right, this episode is called Help, My Teenager Hates Me, and it aired March 9th, 2022.
The boys find out that the joys of playing airsoft come with the challenges of dealing with teenagers. I don't really know who in the writer's room has teenagers, because Trey's stepson is, like, I think like a young adult. You know?
I think he's like our age, at least mid-20s.
Yeah. And Betty, his daughter, is nowhere near a teenager. And I don't think Matt's kids are quite at the teenager
This
level.
is the rare time where I can't just pin it on Trey.
Seriously. I was like, is this Trey's fault? But aside from that, I love this episode because I've worked childcare essentially like my entire life, longer than I should have. Like, I was a babysitter at like 13, 14 for like kids that were only like a couple years younger than me. So I've been doing this for a long time. I've had kids of like every single age, and you know, and I work, you know, at my job, I'm around a lot of the teeny boppers. I'm around a lot of kids around this age, and though most of the time my audience is primarily female, I will get so many of their like boyfriends or guy friends come in, and the way that they portray these teenagers is exact. It is spot on. It is terrifyingly realistic.
Okay, I do have to say, though, I did feel a little bit attacked by the one scene where the teenager calls Stan and doesn't know how to make ramen. So, like, that is me trying to cook, like, me present day.
See, I loved that it showed, like, how dynamic it can be. You can have different types of teenagers. I love the scene where all four of the boys are talking about their own individual problems. With like, Urban has the chronic masturbator, and Kyle has the one threatening to kill people, and then Stan's just like, I wish my teenager would do something. I wish he would do anything. And I'm like, I have seen every single one of those teenagers. They're so realistic, and I love like their possessiveness, because they really are kind of taking on the roles of the parents here, despite being younger. It was so clever, but this was honestly just such a wholesome episode. It didn't have any like super political narrative at all. It was just funny. I loved it. And you don't have to know or have teenagers in your life to know like how incredibly accurate.
Yes, and this was another
I was a teenager once. I was a teenager, and yep, absolutely correct.
And I love, again, this episode is kind of just more of a wholesome, like, kids being kids thing. Because I love the whole joke where Cartman's teenager is always masturbating in the bathroom, but Cartman doesn't realize that's what he's doing. It's
yeah, like, I don't know how your hands could be any softer.
I know, my favorite one, he's like, my teenager went to go take a shit. No shit in the world takes that long. I'm like, I guess Cartman would know.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh. But it's this episode in general, like just start to finish, is just really good from a narrative standpoint. Like it has a clear conflict, and I love its resolution. Even though I still kind of side-eye Gerald and everything. Like I like the idea of like Kyle, he is still a kid, you know, he's put in adult situations, and he's a voice for a lot of adults. But I like when the boys can actually act like kids and be reliant on the adults in their lives.
Yeah.
So, even though, like, still side-eyeing Gerald, because I never forgot the mess that was season 21.
I know. I feel like this episode is kind of making the case for Gerald's redemption. I'm like, I still don't buy it, but I'll allow it for now. Because this was a cute episode.
Like, if Gerald in season 21 wasn't actually Gerald, it was just, like, replaced by some, like, stunt double alien piece of shit. Because the thing is, like, Gerald in the past has always stuck up for his son. Mm-hmm. Like, always. And even in not so great episodes, you know, Gerald's always kind of been on the side. So we're not going to talk about season 21 Gerald. That's kind of irrelevant. But I kind of like the idea of them coming to the rescue. Even Randy. Like, even Randy, and I love the idea of, like, Jim and Carmen just being like, I wish I had a dad.
And I wish I didn't live in a hot dog.
Like, it was just so funny, but wholesome and everything. I loved the ending and everything with them, you know, getting together. And Jimbo saying, like, there's one teenager I haven't accounted for. I can't seem to find him anywhere. And Carmen just immediately is like, I know just what. Oh my gosh. It was such a solid episode. It's one that got tons of laughs out of me the whole time. It had such a satisfying ending. Like, nothing about it felt like, oh, it left something to be desired. Like, it just, point by point by point, always made sense, always was funny. So, big props. And you know, you didn't really have to know too much about Airsoft in order to get it. Though, again, been around a lot of teenage boys, I kind of like the fact that they're like, oh, so these are just like real guns, and you know, they can shoot whatever. Mm-hmm. I was like, yeah, that's absolutely true. Lot of damage.
One of my favorite scenes in the whole episode was, I don't actually remember exactly what happened, but it was like the scene where later on Stan's teenager thinks that Stan's like calling him gay or something, and it's funny, I literally wrote down in my note, I was like, Stan is a gay ally, he would never say that. And then later Stan goes, I had a gay dog. I'm like, okay, fine, never mind that.
Right. Oh, I love all that. He's like, I was one of the first people like who said being gay was okay.
Also, I did freak out a little because he was like, I had a gay dog. I'm like, wait a minute, what, did Sparky die?
I don't know. So the last time we saw Sparky was in the Stick of Truth, and that was years and years ago. So Sparky might be canonical.
No, I think he's living on a farm with Big Gay Al, right? That's what happened.
That's also true. That is also true. But No, I'm totally cool with this episode. I loved it, start to beginning, wholesome, but just joke after joke. It was also just nice seeing all the boys together, and I loved the final thing where it's just like, should I take them out now? And it's, no, we still got a good few years left before they're all turned into monsters. I was like, that is a bad thing to say. Like, there wasn't even honestly really a punchline. That's just what normal parents say. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, that is just ultimate dad talk.
And I thought it was so funny again that it was like Randy about to shoot his son in the fucking head. I'm like, Randy, you're 1,000 times worse than this day will ever be. I can promise you. Like,
I was like, that is just such a wholesome ending. Like, who in the writer's room is dealing with teenagers?
I know, right?
I don't know, though, because we were saying before, Matt's kids are in, like, maybe, like, middle school age. I don't know. That's way worse.
Yeah.
Middle schoolers and preteens are way worse than high schoolers. They're a different breed. Middle schoolers don't give a fuck. So, maybe they are dealing with it. I don't know, but super awesome episode. If not my favorite, definitely up there.
Okay, do you want to go on to the finale?
We'll go on to the finale.
Alright, the last episode is called Credigree Weed St. Patrick's Day Special, and it aired March 16th, 2022.
Butters is shocked to learn that people in South Park don't understand what St. Patrick's Day is really about. Yeah, I mean, not the best description, but I'm reading it off of the website, so, you know. I mean, that's kind of what it's about. Another Butters spotlight, or heavy Butters episode. Mm-hmm. Which
okay, I guess I'll start. There were a few moments in this episode, especially early on, that I loved. I liked the joke where Randy's St. Patrick's Day weed makes you do like an Irish jig after you smoke it. And then I loved that just again this small joke where Randy's like, You guys, I need help with the special. And then Sharon's like, no, like, the kids have to go to school. And then they leave, and Randy's like, fucking piece of shit family.
Like, oh, we shouldn't talk Randy so much, but he really does get the most genuine laughs out of me.
Yeah, he was good this episode.
This was kind of a great episode because it really did. It was kind of the first time that the writers are admitting, like, yeah, okay, we know we're so tired. We know y'all are tired of Randy getting in the way of stuff. Mm-hmm. We're like, all right, we're finally acknowledging it. He keeps fucking up the stuff for the kids and everything. My favorite bit in the entire episode was where Randy's like, I told you to bring me the weed. And Stan is just like, maybe you should just do the cake.
Just try it.
He's like, just try the cake. And he's just like, what the fuck? Oh, yeah. Like,
yes. And I love because he was like, she was just about to like go off the rails, like, Stan, you piece of shit, this is why you could never do anything. Oh. Hold on. Oh, another Randy part that I actually liked is when he's like trying to spy on Token's dad's like weed thing. Token's dad's like, Randy, we all see you behind the bush.
Another big part of this was the allegory for like sexual assault and sexual harassment with pinching people on St. Patrick's Day, where it's just, I was like, that is such a Butters thing to do. It just makes sense. And I kind of thought it was hilarious when he was talking to his lawyer, and his lawyer wasn't wearing any green at all, and he was so tempted where it's like, that's kind of how a lot of people just like actually behave. It's like, wow, you really don't have any self-control, do you?
Okay, and I did the fucking gags of the whole episode where Butters just keeps getting slapped and then tased. Like, I love Butters, but those made me laugh really hard.
Oh, they always do, where I'm like, where he, like, I just kind of love where he's like, I want to give you a pinch, Kelly, and it immediately, like, pans to, like, the police arresting him. And she was wearing green socks the whole time.
Yes.
Like,
and I love... And again, like, Butters was such a great character to do this with, because I'm like, okay, I totally buy that Butters wouldn't understand why he's in trouble. Like, I feel like the other boys would, like, get it, but Butters, like, I understand why he's like, but she's not wearing green.
No, and I was kind of apprehensive with how that joke was going to go, where it's going to be like, oh, all these people are just crying wolf when they're like sexually harassed or whatever. But in the end, they kind of redeemed themselves with the actual St. Patrick's just straight up like diddling people, and they're like, oh wait, yeah, he kind of really is an asshole. And it's like, oh yep, that's the culture. That's what St. Patrick's Day is really all about.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's the culture appropriation.
Yeah.
That's funny, where it's like, white people just want to have a day where we can, be assholes and just get drunk and appropriate somebody. Like, this is the only holiday we're allowed to celebrate something.
Right, and I liked when the actual St. Patrick showed up, and he's like, you've all besmirched a perfectly good white holiday where we all get drunk and assault each other. I'm like, yep, that's what white people love to do.
That's white people for you. And it's like, it's just so funny, because, we see all the time, it's like, oh, white people aren't allowed to celebrate anything. It's like, well, you are. You're just kind of celebrating it, like, in a horrible way. Mm-hmm. You can celebrate Cinco de Mayo, but the second you start putting on, like, offensive costumes and making racist remarks, that's kind of not really celebrating it much anymore.
Right, and then and white people in this country are so dense that they just don't understand it. Like,
they don't. They're like, what do you mean? It's like, nobody is forcing you for Halloween to put on, like, a racist stereotype. Never in my life have I ever wanted to put on blackface to be like Beyonce for Halloween.
Right. And this episode, again, I really enjoyed it, but like, the scenes, I don't know, it kind of made me think, because people on Twitter and Tumblr are still like, I can't believe South Park's still on the air. I see, like, clips of it, and it's so, like, offensive and racist, and that's all there is to it. And I'm like, and I'm watching this episode, I'm like, okay, I can see how you would think that these jokes about, like, sexual assault or white holidays, like, I don't know, like, maybe just because I love South Park so much, and I always give it the benefit of the doubt, I'm like, that's so obviously not what they're trying, like, yeah, that's what the episode's about. They're saying white people should be able to celebrate more. Like, it's just so, I'm like, South Park is so much more clever than that. Like, I just...
Well, and it's kind of like the idea, it's like, you can... It's like when people say, like, Cartman is such a bad character, I can't believe they glorify a character that acts like that. I'm like, Cartman is never the good guy.
Yeah.
Like, and they make it known that he's not the good guy. It's like any other writing. Like, it's like when people are offended by the realities of the book, like To Kill a Mockingbird, where they're like, it's racist. I was like, yeah, that's the point of the book. It's not shown as a good thing. If you're seeing it, if you're trying to say it's a good thing, you kind of miss the point. The same thing kind of happens in South Park. Now, there have been many, many times where I feel like their actual goal of the episode has missed the mark, and they're doing something damaging. Mm-hmm. Like, that's happened before. But in this scenario, it's like you're kind of taking something completely out of context.
Right, and yeah, and in general, it's not just South Park fans or South Park critics that do this. I'm like, God, people on the internet are just fucking brain dead, like, I swear to God.
Yeah. Absolutely. But, again, this episode, again, wasn't, like, my absolute favorite. It's probably in the middle for me. It's probably, like, in the middle of my rankings for this season.
I liked this episode because it did a lot of callbacks to the Big Fix, actually, like, the whole Randy and Steve Black rivalry. And then I also noticed that in one of the scenes, Stan says Tolkien's name, and he pronounces the L, like, very aggressively. And, like, I thought that was a nice callback.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's, it was just a funny episode, so I appreciated it. I kind of realized, I was like, I think this is like the first major St. Patrick's Day episode that they've ever done, and it only took 25 years.
Yeah, that is true. It is the only St. Patrick's Day.
I mean, I know they had the leprechaun in the beginning of the Imagination Land.
That doesn't count.
That wasn't like Oh, it's like specifically. It's like, cool. When's the? Do we have a Valentine's Day episode of South Park?
I mean, probably. I can't think of one, but.
Are we bad at?
What? No. What about the one or the early season episode where all the boys are in love with their substitute, and then Wendy sends her to Mars or something? That was Valentine's Day, right?
I don't know if that's Valentine's or not, but it has the hot chick from Alien or whatever it's called.
Yes.
But yeah, it's a long story, even longer. This was a pretty solid season for me. It was short, but I mean, it ain't the size; it's the motion of the ocean.
You know what? I just realized that I liked this season more than I thought because it's only 6 episodes long and we've been talking for an hour.
Right? Exactly. Well, and also, like, fewer episodes, less opportunities to disappoint. Think about that the next time you wonder when the next episode of our podcast is going to come out.
That's exactly right. Also, before we go, I think we should say happy birthday to Kenny.
Oh, that's right, because we are recording this. Who knows if it'll go up today. We are recording this on March 22nd, which is the official Kenny birthday, though we all know he's kind of born and respawned every time. But we're going to say a good happy birthday to Kenny today.
That's my boy.
That's your boy, that little Aries boy. But, God, you know, we did actually get to see some Kenny. That's probably why I loved Help, My Teenager Hates Me so much. We had all of our boys back together. But no, this actually, just like Johnny Two Cellos, which if you haven't seen his channel, like if you're watching us, you probably have, because he's super awesome. I really liked his season 25 retrospective. Like, you worded it perfectly. Like, this does feel pretty vintage. This feels like, apart from like the modern day like political stuff it's talking about, you know, the stories and the jokes feel like they could have been from a couple seasons back, which is kind of nice. So I liked this season overall. It had like some dud jokes in there, but overall I enjoyed it a lot more looking back.
Yeah, I actually am pretty optimistic for the future if this is the direction they're going in.
We'll see what they have in store for like the next couple of Netflix special, or not Netflix, Paramount Plus specials. Don't hate on me. I don't have Paramount Plus, so.
That's okay. Me neither. I just pirate everything.
Yeah. They make enough money.
Yeah, for real.
Matt and Troy aren't gonna go after us for that. But no, thank you guys for watching again. We're always, you know, we have kind of still editing a Kyle essay-esque episode. We'll see if that ever gets.
Yeah, maybe we'll keep with the theme, and we'll try to get that one out on Kyle's birthday in May. Yeah,
I just moved to a full-time position though, but that also, you know, I've had this entire time working part-time and still haven't worked on it, so I guess it's really no excuse.
All right, well, we had a good time hanging out with you guys.
Oh yeah, we love parasocial relationships up in here. We hope you guys enjoyed, and we will not see you or even talk to you. We'll just talk to each other. But you'll be with us in spirit or some shit like that.
Until next time.
Bye, guys.
Bye.